Hey everyone, it's DFA, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the captain skills in World of Warships Blitz. Which one should you be using on which classes, which one are kind of useless, and we will be supporting our conclusions with data as we normally do. Without further ado, let's get started. We will be using our good friend Victor Laroche through this tutorial. Okay, skill number 1, Underwater Protection Expert. That is what you usually use in the first series. Unless you have a CV, then you use the robotic maneuver, which increases the return speed of all your aircraft squadrons. Pretty useful. Because the third one, emergency response, only decreases the repair time of your steering gear. It does not increase the survivability, and by the time it gets repaired, you will be pretty much dead. That's too bad. If it had been a survivability boost, I would be taking this almost all the time. Series number 2, the torpedo alert, an increase in the detection range. Sounds pretty useful, right? Let's take a look at it in action. And here we are in the training room with the Bayern and the captain that is absolutely not equipped with the skill. Erzgede is going to shoot torpedoes at us. Let's see how soon we detect these, and then we will be comparing it with another ship, a Black Bayern, this time equipped with the captain skill. And so let's measure the reaction time. In the first scenario without the captain skill, we do have 5.88 seconds to react, so between the moment where the torpedoes are detected and they hit the ship. With the commander skill, we do have a little bit more time, but don't get too excited because we have a little bit less than 1 extra second. Probably better off with the second skill, battle skill support, who lets you get 1 extra sonar charges, obviously if your ship is equipped with sonar. If it's not equipped with sonar or AA, the armament repair expert will get you out of these situations where you do not have a damage control kit available to repair your guns or your torpedo tubes. Okay, let's take a look at the third series. We start with High Alert, one of the skills I consider useful because it saves you 5 or 6 seconds for your damage control kit cooldown. And if you're asking yourself why is that useful, when you are permafired and flooded, and it happens a lot in higher tiers, you can easily save several thousand HP with one of these. So there you go, the more vulnerable your ships are to fire and flooding, the more useful High Alert becomes. And it's certainly more useful than preheating the next one. Let's take a look at it in action right now. And here we are in a training room with 2 Sims destroyers on the exact opposites of the map. This one is equipped with preheating, the other one is not. Let's see how much faster we can actually get into that cap. So immediately we notice that the speed is not 37.2, the usual speed of the Sims, it's 38.4, so there is an increase in speed, I give you that. The acceleration, you don't really need the boost in my opinion. There you go. We cap for 1, 2, and that's it, puff. We're not capping anymore. So we got into the first base 2 seconds before the other destroyer. Let's see what we will be able to do with the second circle. And sure enough, how much time do we cap? There you go, 1, 2 again. So it gave us 2 seconds indeed of extra cap. And the skill is already out and you have wasted 1 captain skill for nothing. There you go, preheating pretty much useless in my opinion. And finally, Artillery Maintenance Expert. I'm generally not a fan of skills that are conditioned by the amount of HP that you have. This one has nice bonuses. It can be useful for ships that are not vulnerable to fire and flooding, but I generally prioritize survivability over damage. And that's why I'm generally using High Alert, who will remain active for the whole game. And we take a look at Series 4, we start with the Victorious Charge, which is usually what I pick unless I have an AA ship. Then I pick the Air Defense Expert, who both increases the duration of your AA, very nice, but most important, the cooldown, so you can be ready when the next wave of airplanes come your way. And we conclude with Unstoppable, which is pretty much useless. Good luck finding an application of that one in battle. Okay, now let's take a look at Series 5 and Survivalist. It's going to be an interesting one. So I've tested this on the Bismarck, which has around 50,000 hit points base, and the Survivalist will give us an extra 1100 hit points recovered. On standard kits, on premium kits, an extra 1300. That is quite a lot, because if you're using standard kits, that's a little bit more than 3000 HP recovered per battle. Premium kits, that's a little bit less than 4000 HP. Very, very nice bonus indeed. But just like repair kits, it's conditioned by the amount of health that your ship has. So usually for heavy cruisers and battleships, ships that have over 40,000 hit points, I do recommend that you put Survivalist. Because fire supremacy is not going to be as useful. Yes, it will give you an extra precise aiming or rapid reload charge, but usually it's not going to be compensating offensively what you will be losing in survivability. Couple of exceptions: ships that are equipped with precise aiming and rapid reload like the Roma or the Black Gascogne, and ships that are equipped with rapid reload 3 where the increase in damage is much more important than the increase in survivability. Still, over 90% of the cases for battleships and heavy cruisers, you are better off with Survivalist. So we use Survivalist on ships that have a nice hit point pool. We do use the Fire Supremacy on ships that are equipped with Rapid Reload 3 or Precise Aiming and Rapid Reload, and for the others we do have Daredevil, which gives you a nice boost in rudder shift time and traverse speed when your ship has less than 1/3 of its HP. Let's take a look at it in action. And here we are in the training room with the Black Bismarck that's been hit just hard enough to be activating the Daredevil. We're going to take a look at the time it takes us to go from one end of the rudder to the other one and see how much time we actually save with Daredevil. So there it is with Daredevil. Let's take a look at it. And so we put our rudder in one direction and then we go into the other one. How much time will it actually take to steer that Black Bismarck, who is probably not the most agile battleship, but that's why I wanted to test this with battleships, because that's where you can most easily measure the difference, and we see that it takes us a little bit less than 12 seconds to go from one end to the other, and a total of 25 seconds to completely turn one side and the other one. Let's continue the test. This time we're going to be healing ourselves to deactivate Daredevil, and we will repeat the same sequence. Yeah, but this time I'm afraid it's certainly not going to be as nimble, but there we are. Let's get started, and immediately we noticed that the traverse, it's actually quite nice, but that's where it stops. When you reach the middle of the rudder, just when you actually need it to traverse it, that's where it is much slower, and it's not going to take us 12 seconds but 16 seconds to go from one end to the other. So the difference is actually very noticeable without Daredevil. And that's why it's the skill I generally recommend for lighter vessels that rely on their mobility to be dodging shells and staying alive, like destroyers and light cruisers. There you go, 32 seconds instead of 25. Yep, this one can keep you alive a little bit longer. Alright, series number 6, Exploit Weakness. You deal 1 extra % damage when you attack ships that are on fire or flooded, and here we are shooting at the Bismarck, and indeed from 109 to 110 with our HE shells. It's completely useless. Let's assume that we managed to deal 10,000 fire damage to the Bismarck and 20,000 damage with our shells. We would have gained a total of 300 damage. So remember, you need the ships to be on fire or flooded. That's quite a big condition and very low reward, only 1% of damage. I recommend you skip this one. And so yes, let's go straight to Generalist, giving you 1% of your HP every time you use a damage control kit, and a nice boost in fire and flooding resistances for 25 seconds. And that's generally the one I pick for most of my skill, the most useful one, because you always need all the help you can get with fire and flooding resistances, and the 1 HP bonus, okay, it's better than nothing. So yep, probably the most useful one in the 6th category. In any case, I find it more useful than recon and surveillance. Even for ships that are equipped with sonar, you do not need to be activating it all the time if you choose your engagements well. I think I'm only using it on the mains and on Reaper, because the mains is always in very close proximity with destroyers, and Reaper gets a nice boost in recon and surveillance. Alright, Series 7 fully prepared. It's the one I'm usually picking unless I am playing with a ship that has precise aiming. Then Marksman can be useful, but then you need to look at the reload time of the ship. For the Mogami it's not useful. For the Maya it's useful because it lets you get another salvo. Generally speaking, for battleships it's a very useful one, but then you need to look at it on a case-per-case basis. And finally, Dogfight Specialist is mandatory for CVs because it's the only way to increase your dogfight damage for your fighters, and it also gives a boost in the attack efficiency as well. And we go straight to Series 8. We start with the Extinguisher, one of the nice captain skills in the game, giving you a 15% reduction in damage taken from fire, because if there is only one certainty you can have in life besides death and taxes, is that you will be set on fire in that game. So this one will always be useful. Unless you have a ship equipped with smoke or fuel smoke, then I absolutely recommend you take Mist Weaver. And so yes, even with ships equipped with the fuel smoke like the Cossack we are seeing here, because although it will not increase the duration or the size of your smoke screen, it will drastically reduce the reload. Here we see from 60 seconds to approximately 40 seconds. That allows you to reuse it quite often. That is why I recommend it even for ships that are not equipped with the smoke screen, but with the fuel smoke. Of course, if you only have one shard, then it's pretty much useless. And finally, another conditional skin, Adrenaline Rush, gives you a bonus of 7.5 reload when your ship has less than 25% of its maximum HP. So again, a bonus that is not very high indeed, and that has to be activated when you are already in a pretty bad position. Let's use the previous skills indeed to avoid getting into those situations. If it was like on PC, where it activated as of the beginning and the reduction in reload time is actually progressive, I would probably recommend it, but in the current state and form, absolutely not. Let's move on to Series 9. We start with the Demolition Expert, plus 10% chance of destroying modules on enemy ships. Very nice, but what is your actual chance of destroying modules on enemy ships? Let's take a look at it. So far I've recorded data for around 17,000 hits while testing the ships in training homes, the majority of them being battleships from tier 6 to tier 10 shooting at other battleships. And so far it appears that your average chance to be damaging a module is around 4%. Some ships are a little bit above that, others are a little bit below, but that's the general average. So increasing that and by 10% and leaving it at 4.4 or 4.5% if you're using Yamamoto, it's not going to make a major improvement, I'm afraid. And I did retested this with 1500 hits and it did not improve the situation. And keep in mind, you would have to actually damage a main turret for it to have an impact on your gameplay. If you damage a secondary gun from 10 kilometers, yeah, it's not very useful, right? So there you go, Demolition Expert, no improvement visible. And so we move on to the next one, the Close Quarters Combat Expert. Very useful because the dispersion on the secondaries is not very good and you need all the help you can get to be hitting those really small destroyers that are a little bit too close to you. So useful one indeed, the one I pick for every ship which has secondaries. And so if you don't have secondaries, you can always pick the Engine Overload if you have the Engine Accelerator skills. Not only does it help with the duration, but also with the cooldown. Okay, Series 10, Compartment Maintenance, minus 50% damage taken from flooding. Usually when you get flooded for the whole duration on a battleship, you will lose around 10,000 HP. That will save you 1500, provided it happens, obviously. Okay, it can be a bit useful. Unless you're in a situation where the Master Reloader is nice for you, the duration it's not going to be useful on the majority of the ships, maybe only on a few ones like Des Moines or Aigle, where you can actually squeeze an extra salvo with the extra 5-second duration. But generally it is more useful for the cooldown reduction, giving you a nice 15 seconds reduction in cooldown, and that's probably the one you have to pick when you have more than 2 rapid reload charges on a ship. Finally, the Honor Seeker is quite interesting. If you obtain 1 medal in battle, you get plus 15% damage. That's quite nice. I only use that in ships that are actually in a position to be getting medals quite early in the game, like CVs or destroyers, or even light cruisers, the ones that can actually get a first strike or a clash zone medal quite early. But to be honest, it's more of a default choice. Generally speaking, for battleships, I go with the compartment maintenance, even though the benefit is a little bit limited. My chances of getting the Honor Seeker quite enough on time for it to be useful is rather limited. Series 11, Dauntless Dive, reduction in bomb dispersion and increase in bomb penetration. Actually did test that with Cunningham and the Indomitable, and it resulted in a 9% damage increase, so that's quite a nice thing, absolutely mandatory for CV players. IFHE is a different story, plus 15% main battery HE shell penetration. Let's take a look at this one. So yes, I did test this one, not with the standard 15%, but with the 22.5% that Togo gives you on the Akizuki, firing at the superstructure of Bismarck, as you can see. With the Mogami, firing at the superstructure as well. There is no point in hitting the main armor belt with HE. And I also tested with the King George V in the same circumstances, because I already had HE data for this one. And the damage was increased by 2% for the cruiser and the destroyer. There was no increase for the battleship. So there you go, IFHE, not super useful. Let's take a look at the next one. And here we are, APCS plus 5% main battery AP shell penetration, and then plus 10% in the sustainability over distance. So I've tested this one with Yamamoto and the Nagato with APCS against the Bayern and the West Virginia, two targets for which I already had data without APCS, and yes, the Bayern there was actually not difference in penetration or damage per shell, but against the West Virginia an increase of 10% in the damage per shell. That is quite a lot actually. And so the conclusion is pretty simple. Even for ships that rely mostly on HE to be dealing damage, you can take APCS as well, simply because you will be able to score more pens, for example against destroyers in a Chapayev or in an Akizuki than you were before, and that's certainly going to be compensating for the mediocre increase in HE damage over the enemy shell, because like remember, this was recorded in ideal conditions with a stationary target where it was very easy to hit the superstructure. Overall, APCS is the better choice, even though the increase in damage is not always guaranteed. There are still targets that you will not be able to pen. But against others, the difference between a full pen and a half pen is already enough to justify the skill. Final series, number 12, we start with the Horizontal Protection Expert, the most useful skill probably because it gives you extra protection for your deck armor, but also it reduces the risk of fire on the deck and the superstructure, and it actually stacks with the deck protection modification that you can equip as equipment. What that concretely means is having this and the deck protection modification will result in you taking 30% less fires, and you will also take less damage from shells hitting your deck. And so this is my number one choice for any battleship or cruiser, because for CVs and DDs I take the Giant Hunter, nice skill, no condition, use it. And finally, Citadel Strike, let's take a look at this one. So that's a Shikishima with Yamamoto without the skill activated. There we go, a nice Citadel damage of 7400. And now with Yamamoto and with the skill, same opponent. And here we are, a nice damage, 8144. So yep, a 10% increase, it works just as advertised with Yamamoto, and the Shikishima is probably the only ship for which I could find some use for that, because yeah, you will be much better with the extra protection that the Horizontal Protection Expert will give you. So there you go, that concludes that Captain Skills guide. I hope you've enjoyed it. We learned a couple of very interesting things. Bam, there we go, another one. Only thing I'm going to ask is for you not to ask any question regarding Captain builds in the comment section, because you have all the data that you need to be making your decisions now. But if you still have questions, you can join our Discord server. Well, we typically will be happy to answer that for specific ships, because yeah, you can pretty much guess it was impossible to make that guide for every single ship in the game. Yep, so the recommendations here are generally applicable. So there you go, hope you've enjoyed it. See you soon, stay safe, take care. That was DeathFromAbove signing out. Bye bye.